Celtics Beat is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
What's up, everyone? Welcome in. New edition of Celtics Beat. I feel like I should start by just kind of apologizing because the last time that we spoke with you, it has been, technically we are, within the confines of what we do, which is technically one show per week. But as the calendar has played out, that last one show, which, if I remember right, was with one Donnie Wahlberg, that preceded the NBA Finals. And here we are, 3 games in, and the Celtics effectively champions, historically effectively champions. They are up 3-0 on the Dallas Mavericks. Game 4 is Friday night there in Dallas, but with the C's, 1 win away, 4 quarters away from immortality. The reason that I say is this is over is because by NBA standards, it is. We have seen in history, whatever the round, in totality, 155 teams take a 3-0 series lead, and not a one single team has blown it. 14 times it's happened in the NBA Finals. So the Celtics, they're champs. I know it hasn't happened yet. I hate even talking about this in this way because in the back of my head, I know what the Red Sox did in 2004. I know what happened with the Bruins the year they blew the 3-0 against Philadelphia, albeit not in a championship round. So we've just never seen it in the NBA, and here's hoping it doesn't happen now. But we're going to get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about what we have seen so far, what we should expect in Game 4. Will it go 5 back to Boston? Is this thing going to end in a sweep? And just the context, the historical context of what it all means. And there's really no one better to join us and break that down than, of course, the man who is on the mic for each and every one of these games. And you can even see him on social media on camera on the mic with Cedric Maxwell breaking these things down. It's a lot of fun to watch behind the scenes as well. Sean Grande, the radio voice of the team, and has been through, truly the highest of highs with this team, the championship in 2008, to the lowest of lows, which in your tenure, Sean, is probably the breaking up of the new Big Three and the beginning of the Brad Stevens era as a head coach and the rebuild to where we are now, obviously, where he I don't want to leave Danny Ainge out of this, but those two men in constructing this team into the champions that we are about to see. This final series so far, what has this been like?
Well, all you have to do is, what's the last time we talked? Didn't we have a conversation in which there was still all of the angst that everybody lived through all year? And I said something, I don't remember, but I think I said something like, what if it's not what we think it's going to be? What if it becomes walking backwards into this? What if it becomes like Denver last year? What if they play in the playoffs the way they played the regular season? And like most pieces of history, they are inconceivable until they become actual history. And the 30,000-foot view of this team all year is that they have been miles better than everybody else. So why would anybody be surprised that they've been miles better than everybody else through the playoffs? It shouldn't have been a surprise, but the scars of the last few years, I think, just didn't allow people to see this team for what it really was. And to me, the notion of, well, it was only Dallas in the finals and Donovan Mitchell didn't play and Jimmy Butler. I think the Celtics, if anybody gets quote unquote hurt by it, historically, it's going to be the Celtics who are victimized by those teams not playing because, spoiler alert, if you guys haven't figured it out yet already, the Celtics were going to win this year no matter what. And that includes Denver, by the way. Would they have gone 15-2 with a double-digit scoring differential through the playoffs if the path had been harder? Probably not. But you don't need to go 16-2. You just need to go 16-12.
Yeah, and the perspective here is, and I think it's lost in the weeds a little bit because it just feels like everybody has tried to poke holes through this thing on the way there. But what you're not realizing is the historic run this team has gone on, not just this year, the last couple of years. Sean, I think you might have had this last night. What are they, 21-7 on the road the last 3 years, which is like the best mark in NBA history. This team is just every step of the way, checked every single box. And Sean was on this early. Sean, before the season ended, you were like, look, if this thing ends the way it's supposed to end here, we're going to be talking again about a team that has won their 18th title and they're going to raise a banner. You called it pretty early on, I think, in the process. But I think what has gotten lost is how historically great this team is, how unbelievable it is that this team, led by two guys in their mid-20s, is about to become immortal, right? It's if you look at the shot charts of things and the flow charts of things, what people are missing is a complete team effort on both ends of the floor. Everybody's connected, and that's why they're so dominantly good. Instead of poking fun at, Jason Tatum didn't shoot well, we're missing the forest through the trees. So help guide us here. This is the C's have been on the precipice of this for a while now. Now that they're about to kick the door and claim immortality. Help us put this in perspective. This is one of the greatest teams potentially in NBA history here.
There can be no argument against that at this point. And what I said all year, it was a season of watching the history unfold. And then I would, in doing my prep, obviously a lot of people who follow me on Twitter know that's just my game prep. And I'm doing it late at night and I'll just throw something up there. And it was inevitably, the Celtics just did this thing, which has never been done before in NBA history. And invariably, in the replies somewhere, there would be, yeah, but they haven't won the championship. Okay, I get that. But there was no championship to win in November. There was no championship to win in January. There was no championship to win in March. And all along, for all the people, I kept saying, if the Celtics don't win the championship this year, yes, they will be one of the greatest teams in NBA history to not win the championship. But if they do, they will be one of the greatest teams in NBA history, period. And here is the secret sauce and why the 2024 Celtics fit like a glove with the other Celtic championship teams. The secret sauce of Boston Celtics tradition isn't that they've won the championships. It's how they have won the championships. And all of these teams have something in common. They don't just have great players. They have great players that have accepted smaller roles for the betterment of the team. That is the Celtics tradition, and that is where the 2024 team fits with all of the others. And obviously I was here for every minute in 08, and that was a special team in and of its own way. But the statistical comp here has been 86. From game 1 to game 99, this team has been in stride, almost this simpatico with the 86 team, not just in how many games they've won and how they have dominated statistically, but how they have played the game together.
I'm glad that you mentioned game 99 because that, of course, makes the next one 100. And if the Celtics can complete this in a sweep, as much fun as it would be to say, well, that's 14 straight wins over Kyrie Irving since he stomped on the lucky logo at the Garden, there is a more significant number at hand, Sean, and that is, of course, 80-20. That is what the Celtics record would be this year if they can finish this in a sweep. 80-20. Your pal Bill Simmons over at The Ringer, he tweeted out, there's a 20 loss or less club for NBA champs, and only 6 teams have done it with 80-plus wins too, of course, going into this year. Those include the Bulls of 96 and 97, the Warriors of 17 and 15, the Sixers in 67, Celtics did it in 86, the team you were just talking about, Lakers in 87, the Bucks in 71, Sixers also in 83. So Celtics are trying to obviously join this club here and do it for the second time. But I think, what's so interesting, not surprising. I mean, people, it's just sort of cliche at this point for people around the country who are not Boston fans of whatever sport to hate Boston teams of whatever sport. But, I'll hear from friends who, there are a lot of people around the NBA that want to do this, that want to pick this apart. I sent that text, that tweet rather, from Simmons to a few friends, and one wrote, I understand what the numbers say, but there's some nuance in these conversations. The 2017 Warriors would probably have beaten the Celtics in 5. That Cavs team they stomped was way better than this Mavs team. Celtics are worthy champs of 23-24, no doubt about it, but I'm not crowning them anything beyond that. And that is going to be, the mindset of a lot of people. I wholeheartedly understand that. But I sort of feel like you can do that with any champion of any sport. You can go back through history and cherry pick champs all you want and compare and contrast. We do that. That's what people in our space do. We like to rank things. That's fine. I don't care about that. But to say that this team, certainly statistically, but even on the floor, is anything less than a historically great NBA team, I just don't know how to help these people at this point. I mean, it's just a fact.
If this happens in game 4, or whenever it happens, if this inevitability happens, and I do believe one day somebody's going to come back from 03 and win a series. And when it happens, probably one of the single most likely teams to ever do it was the Celtics team last year. It's going to be a higher seeded team that is really, really good, that struggles for whatever reason early in a series, that has 5 and 7 at home. You know, like you can sort of see the pieces that are there. This obviously doesn't look like it's going to be that, for a variety of reasons. All of those discussions are about to become irrelevant, because when this team walks through that magic door and takes the 80th step, the discussion isn't going to be about, no one's going to care anymore about the set. I mean, think about what you're talking about. This 24 Celtics versus the 17 Warriors and the greatest teams of all time. Things are about to happen possibly within the next 24 or 36 hours. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, their numbers getting retired. Al Horford's number could easily be retired. Al and Drew Holiday becoming Hall of Famers. These are the things we're talking about that are going to happen. And that discussion, the angst and the finger pointing or whatever that has been aimed at Jason particularly, and Jaylen and the Celtics the last few years, we've already seen it in the last 24 hours, how narratives are going to begin to shift. What was what was the sexy discussion last night? Where the Celtics rank all time, or how Luka Doncic had a meltdown on the big stage just as he did in the World Cup? It's not going to be about where the 24 Celtics rank all time. It's going to be, why does Luka always lose it in these situations? Why does Anthony Edwards always smile after the Timberwolves lose? Why does this player who hasn't won a championship yet act the way he... Because that is the way of it. People will move on to what's next, and you will never, as a Celtics fan, if you're worried about people pointing to the 96 Bulls or the 17 Warriors, know that you will never, ever, ever have to apologize for winning a championship. They didn't in Toronto when Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson both went down in the finals. They didn't last year in Denver when the Nuggets beat 8 seeds in the conference finals and finals. It is concrete part of history. It is a championship. It is bulletproof, and it's about to be yours.
Quick break to tell you, today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in, folks. Get in all the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hopes, knowledge, into some serious cash. And Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. And right now for basketball, that's huge. Like Cade Cunningham got scratched before the game, 10 minutes prior to the game. And all I saw on the internet was everybody melting down over this Cade Cunningham designation. Well, guess what? Prize Picks has you covered in case of that. And Prize Picks is now the official daily fantasy sponsor of CLNS. And thanks to our new partnership, our listeners get a sweet new deal to sign up with Prize Picks. Just download the app, use the promo code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 after you download the app. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I guess this championship does a lot for everybody in terms of narratives for everybody. But I think the most interesting one, just given the little history we have with him, is Joe Mazzulla, who is thrust into a situation from, Division II Fremont State to the main Celtics to the second group of coaches and the main Celtics squad, the actual Boston Celtics, and becomes head coach and all of a sudden is leading this team. I think every narrative about this guy that's ever existed is just completely evaporized because
I don't know. Think about what we 80 and 20. I mean, it could be like 85 and 15 if they had a good head coach.
I know, and this to me, because he's so different than everybody else, I think in terms of just how he sees the game, I think a lot of people haven't figured out that this guy is really into the intricacies of coaching a basketball team and cares way more. Like when JJ had his interview with Joe in the beginning of the season, he talked about afterwards how much better he felt about the Celtics and their future because of that interview. So I watched it and I understood what he was saying. What Joe has done here in 2 years is win at the highest level humanly possible. Is a Tatum rolled ankle away from going to back-to-back finals, and is doing it under intense scrutiny that doesn't even make any sense. Like, again, there's so much to dissect here, but from where you're sitting, does it feel like for Joe, this is the what shuts everybody up about his coaching style and how quirky he is and how different he is? Can we allow him to be Joe Mazzulla now? Does this allow him to be himself in front of everybody else?
Of course, because everybody is going to wear the championship in a different way. It makes you bulletproof in a lot of ways. Listen, there'll be Joe Mazzulla issues, right, in years going forward, but he'll always be the championship coach. And I've said this now publicly, but it's something I'll tell you guys I've been saying to him for quite a while. 5 years from now, when Joe Mazzulla, I've been saying this since February, 5 years from now, Joe Mazzulla will be a championship coach or a multi-time championship coach. That'll be the new one, by the way. Once the Celtics, can you win again? That'll be the first question. Like the pressure for the Celtics to win multiple championships to be one of the truly great teams. Problems to worry about. But 5 years from now, Joe Mazzulla will be coaching against some new dude, right? That, maybe came up as an assistant some way, and Joe will be Eric Spoelstra. And it'll be the new guy who has no chance to win a playoff series against Joe Mazzulla, because look at the coaching matchup. Look at the disparity between the great championship coach Joe Mazzulla and this new guy. When Joe's always been the same. I am not a hater of hot take theater. I love it as much as everybody else. It's fun. It's breakfast cereal, right? It's great. We need it. We love it. Try to imagine, if you will, I don't want to give away too much of tomorrow night's broadcast. Try to imagine, if you will, being a Celtics fan or an NBA fan of the 60s and being transported into 2024. The game would look like it's being played on Mars. Not to mention the fact you would have First Take killing Bill Russell for his free throw shooting and forensic analysis of Larry Bird's reaction to Cedric Maxwell getting the MVP of the finals in 81. It's a different world. It's a hot take world, and it's fun, and it's great. But at the end, there's real life. And in real life, Joe Mazzulla was thrust into a spot, with the exception, as we've talked about, of Jack McKinney getting thrown off his bike in 1980. This doesn't exist, the situation he had to walk into. And he has stayed, I think the most impressive thing was so much pressure to do otherwise. He has stayed true to himself. And he has coached the way he felt he needed to coach. And he's going to have the ultimate honor of and reward for something in life that's really important, which is staying true to what you believe and doing it your way.
So building on that, I don't know if you guys saw it. I tweeted out last night, just in the sort of aftermath of that game and being excited, being on the precipice of what we know is coming, or at least presume is coming, barring a truly historic collapse. What would Banner 18 mean to Boston? This is, elements of this we've touched on over the course of the season. Sean, you mentioned a couple of them already, that it ensures Tatum.
It ends the 5.5-year drought in Boston. This is just, my gosh. Do you realize there are kids who are nine years old, kids who are 8 or 9 years old that haven't experienced really, truly a championship in town? It's tragic.
Obviously you say that in jest, but like my 11-year-old who is really into this playoff run, and the 9-year-old to a lesser degree, but the 11-year-old especially, has said that, he really wants to go to the parade and all of this stuff, obviously, but it's like, he doesn't really remember the Red Sox in 18, so this is sort of the first time that he is going through this. And so, for certain generations, age gaps, whatever, this is significant. He barely even, was following it as intently when the Celtics were in the championship round 2 years ago. So interest in all of that, passion, it evolves over time. But as you alluded to, Tatum, Brown, maybe Horford, this ensures their numbers are going up in the rafters. And I think everyone assumed Tatum and Brown anyway, but this crystallizes it. Horford and the Holiday Hall of Fame cases, as you brought up, as I touched on before, the sort of finishes what Danny Ainge was working so hard toward in the multiple stages of the rebuild that began, of course, with that infamous Nets trade. The new NBA record for championships of 18 separating from the Lakers, although people have pushed back on that and said they don't have 17, Minneapolis doesn't count, in the same way that, like I saw Shea Serrano post on Twitter, hey Celtics fans, like anything pre-merger doesn't count. So like you begin in 86. So or the stuff that happened in the 80s, like that's where you start. So, everybody has a different view, obviously, of what counts, what doesn't, da 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 da. And of course there's like we've talked about this before, the storybook ending for Mike Gorman and all of that going off into the sunset, with his broadcast career. But I think one thing that we're not talking about enough in the whole what does it mean context is that I think that this guarantees, if there were any doubts anyway, and maybe there shouldn't have been, that Wyc Grousbeck and company continue to spend. Now, Jason Tatum obviously was getting his contract, doesn't matter. But let's say the Celtics lost in 6 to Dallas, lost in 5 to Dallas, didn't reach the NBA Finals, lost in the conference finals. There would be a lot of conversation around, all right, do you have to break up the Jays? Is Jalen getting traded? Do you really need to extend Derek White? Do you give him that payday? He's the guy at this point. Tatum's getting his, Brown has his, Porzingis has his, Holiday has his, Al will be here till he retires. It's White at this point in time. And I think that this championship, if it wasn't already set in stone, guarantees that White gets his money, that Wyc and that ownership group are going to chase as many banners as they can, which is a good thing, by the way. If anyone takes that any other way, that is a great thing. Do you think the ownership and the spending has anything to do with this at all?
I think you have to have an ownership that is willing to do whatever it takes to compete. And that seems like an easy thing to say, but we know that it doesn't always happen. There are owners in other sports and in this sport that have other agendas when it comes to doing whatever it takes to be done to win a championship. And that's one thing you can say about this ownership group from day one. They literally named it Banner 17. That was what mission statement was. Mm-hmm. Mission statement, mission accomplished, which by the way had to do with so I just got asked about that. Obviously, as you can imagine, people are asking that question too. In 2008, mission statement, mission accomplished was I always wanted to do something about the mission statement because that to me was the idea that they had set out on this journey from the start, saying this was the impossible goal. We want to get there and trying to figure out a way to honor all the people in the office and everybody behind the scenes. I wanted to get mission statement in there. And if you remember, and maybe you don't because it seems like, hey, 2008, it was that. It's a long, long time ago now. The great Tim Russert from NBC News died that week. In fact, one of his last conversations was with Mike Barnicle, and they had talked about the comeback in Game 4 in LA. Did you see that game last night? That was one of the last conversations that Tim Russert had with anybody, let alone, with Mike Barnicle, and he told that story. The Sunday of Game 5, Meet the Press was completely devoted to Tim Russert. It was an all Tim Russert episode to honor him. And the feature of that episode was his famous interview with Donald Rumsfeld, pressing him on that statement that they made it as an administration mission accomplished in Iraq, and whether it was or whether it wasn't or whether he should have said it. But that was sort of the signature moment of Tim Russert. And I watched that interview and going back and forth over that statement, mission accomplished. And that was the morning of Game 5. Sometimes people think things pop into your head months earlier, and mission statement, mission accomplished. That's where that came from. It was actually a Tim Russert thing that happened on the morning of Game 5, which I still, to this day, I've given literally half of my life now to the NBA. I have 26 years in the league, and half of my life has been in the NBA. And I've still never been more surprised by a result of any one game than the Celtics not winning Game 5 in 2008 and winning the championship there. The lesson, kids, don't win that game so you can get on a plane and fly 3,000 miles to take a beating of a lifetime, which is obviously what happened. That's why teams lose that game. That's why the Celtics, by the way, have won 5 consecutive closeout games on the road. This is often how this happens, by the way. 5 straight closeouts for the Celtics, 5-0 in their last 5 chances to do this on the road. Personally, on a personal level, and on a lot of ways, I think it would be a lot cooler for the Celtics to lose Game 4 and to win in Boston on Monday night. But there's all these different, historical perspectives that you have when things like that happen.
Quick break from today's show to tell you today's show is brought to you by Game Time. The NBA playoffs are here. I don't know about you guys. I am dying to get my hands on some tickets to any one of these playoff games for the Celtics. I would love to be inside TD Garden to experience the atmosphere. And with Game Time, it's never been easier or faster to get playoff tickets. And prices on Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. And with last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can pick out any game you want. It doesn't matter. You find the game, they have tickets for you, okay? No question about it. And you can even customize your spot, look for some inspiration from Game Time. Let's say like, hey, I want to have this view, but that's what I'm really looking for. You can limit it. You can narrow your focus down to zone deals. You can buy flash deals, or you can view from your seat and lowest price guaranteed every single time. They have last minute deals. You can save to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. It's not just NBA. I know we're an NBA podcast, but you can get, let's say, Sebastian Maniscalco's coming around. You want to see that guy in concert. He's hilarious. I look into it. And you can save even more when you choose a section like Game Time. Choose the seats for you with some sweet zone deals. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, the redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Quick break to tell you today's show is brought to you by Arena Club. It's not easy being a fan of trading cards, of ripping open packs or ripping open repacks. It's all hyped up, this world of just opening a pack and having a Michael Jordan or a Wayne Gretzky or whoever your favorite rookie card is fall right into your lap, but with zero transparency on available cards and hit rates. It's just all a shot in the dark, man. Until right now, introducing slab packs from arenaclub.com, the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Now when I buy a slab pack at Arena Club, it finally feels like I know what I'm getting, that mystery box feeling, right? Like, I understand you watch these unpacking videos and part of it is like, oh, I want to see this guy's stupid face when he doesn't get anything. Or I want to see what happens that one time you pull that something that's super valuable. That feeling, no longer there. You know what's replaced with? One that makes you feel better. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. And after your pools are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your vault for safekeeping, for trading, and selling. You can have them officially graded by Arena Club. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase by going to arenaclub.com/CLNS. Crazy offer. 10% off. A $4 slab pack. That's $40 right there. That's arenaclub.com/CLNS for 10% off your first purchase. Yeah, and history is going to be a big part of what everybody talks about from here on out. I'm just, I'm trying to stay in the moment here and like not get too caught up in things, but it's hard not to. And the one thing that I just keep coming back to is just both Jalen and Jason. These two guys, and how much they've gone through and battled together and ups and downs all over the place. I mean, both of them, when they're rookies and Jalen's not starting and Jason's just sitting in the corner as a spot up 3-point shooter. And then, they're ushered into the next era where they have a little more responsibility. And here we are now, they're on the precipice of their first championship together. And throughout all of that, people have wanted to just break those two guys up. What do you think this championship says about continuity within a team structure and keeping guys together for the long haul?
Well, that's an interesting way to phrase it because it certainly applies to those two. But on the other hand, it will also, the great lesson of the championship will be that you can't just run it back when you get close, because as much as sticking with Jalen and Jason is the centerpiece of it, I mean, think of what it took to trade Marcus Smart and Rob Williams and the sixth man of the year, Malcolm Brogdon, when you're right there, as you just said 10 minutes ago, a turned ankle from Jason Tatum not only keeps the Celtics from the finals, but being what we just said, the first team ever to come back from 3-0. That's how close they were to do that. The temptation when you're that close is to not make changes. And yet the hard decisions, the impossible decisions, the under 45 minutes of pressure before Porzingis can opt out of his contract and having to make this decision to trade a guy a lot of people felt, including in my house, and a devastated 11-year-old at the time, that Marcus Smart was the heart and soul of this team. And I hope every Celtic fan tomorrow night or whenever this happens holds a special place in their heart for Marcus Smart, because there are Max and I certainly are two people that felt the Celtics were, when they eventually won a championship, that Marcus was going to be a part of it. And he is a part of it. He may too, by the way. I don't think he should be forgotten in all this, in this run of the last couple of years. But there's a history of this, right? Nomar, didn't Nomar get kind of booted out, right? In 2004. And I brought this one up too. Tony Amonte from Hingham, great BU hockey player, was on the 94 Rangers. There's always that guy that gets, traded right before a championship. But it's an entire process. But with Jalen and Jason, the thing about them that separates them is that this path to get there, a lot of great players have had to walk it, but virtually none have had to walk it constantly in the conference finals every year and in the constant spotlight. Michael Jordan making the playoffs, in 86, losing in the first round of the Celtics, having those great games. And how many years did they lose? There's very few comps other than like Michael, because he was such a high-profile player. Luka is now under the spotlight, and he's losing in the finals, and he's having these meltdown moments that we talk about. But has Dallas been in the conference finals the last 4 or 5 years here? No. They missed the play-in last year. So a lot of guys continue this, this ramp forward. They're not under the constant spotlight. So the reason there was all this discussion about Jason Tatum and about breaking up Jason and Jalen and the things that are devoid in their game, the things that set that, is because people had so many cracks at them on the high stage, on this big stage to watch. And look at what happened to Anthony Edwards, who we spent the entire season anointing the next Michael Jordan, until what happened? You saw him look like a human being. Where? On the big stage, because he finally got on it. It's easy to call a guy the next Michael Jordan when he's having a good regular season. It's a different thing to actually win it. And what Luka's learning is that you have to have guys around you that you trust and believe in. Michael Jordan didn't win a championship. He started trusting the guys around him. When he was playing for Doug Collins, every play was Michael Jordan. Jordan left, Jordan right, Jordan scoring 50. It wasn't until he trusted his teammates that he learned how to win. And to me, if this thing that you guys have said is a done deal that we're all talking about happens, if it happens tomorrow night, there's a reason that Jason Tatum is going to have more world championships at age 26 than Jordan, LeBron, Steph, and Shaq combined.
Durant, the list goes on. No, it's incredible. Obviously, you mentioned Brad Stevens or some of the moves that he has made, obviously, to help get them here. And I'll be honest, I miss head coach Brad Stevens, not in the sense that, I wish he was coaching this team instead of Joe Mazzulla, but in the sense that I just always find him such a fascinating basketball listen. And obviously, I'm sure part of you misses talking to him as frequently as, you did when you were doing all the pregame interviews with him versus now. I'm certain you're still in touch, but not in the same way. Obviously, I just think it, guys move into these front office roles. You don't hear from them as much publicly, and it's not the same. And I think that he is such a great basketball mind. So is Joe Mazzulla. So this has nothing to do with Mazzulla, but he's such a great basketball mind to where, he got this change in role. We'll call it a promotion. It is, but it's also just it was a fork in the road, and one path went one way and one went the other way. And I thought that I was very high on head coach Brad Stevens. I thought he, had the ability to be a championship winning head coach in the NBA. Instead, what he is about to be is a championship winning executive, an executive of the year, and a guy that, you could look at a lot of the moves that he has made that I'm not sure that, and I'm not comparing one versus the other, just talking about what we've seen, moves that I'm not sure that Danny Ainge would have made, whether it was, unloading the first round pick with Kemba Walker to bring Al Horford back here, whether it was, Derek White and that trade, obviously. Does he go out and trade Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis under the wire there when Brogdon falls through, and then turn around and bring in Drew Holiday? Who knows? I mean, there's no way to answer that question. But Brad Stevens and company, Austin Ainge, Mike Zarin, everybody else involved, they have just put together such an incredible run of moves since he ascended to that role, to where obviously they're about to complete this puzzle. And I'm just not sure, and I guess I lean toward you, Sean, to put this in the proper perspective, because I'm not sure I have the words for it, to truly celebrate the fact that he is just, I always thought he could be good at this job. Who knew? I mean, we didn't know whether he would be, but he could be. He's got the right head for it. But the fact that he has done what he has done with everyone around him so quickly and so emphatically, to where I just don't think his coaching ceiling, looking back, was as high as his executive ceiling and what he is still capable of doing in the years to come.
Brad Stevens took over a team that the night before, in a playoff game, started Evan Fournier, Romeo Langford, and Tristan Thompson. Ponder that for a second. And 3 years later, he has anybody, and I think you guys know as much as anybody, how much it physically pains me to say nice things about Brad after we battled for 8 years on the air every night. And now you simply, if you're me, how about some sympathy for me? You have no choice. What on earth is there to say? Has any GM had a better 3 years ever in any sport? And for a guy who preached for all these years to hit singles, he just has driven them into the gap time after time after time. And again, I bring that up because I don't think people truly remember how ugly that. I think people skip over 2021, and they skip over the fact that in 2019, when Kyrie left, Al Horford also left. It was inconceivable. One of the most underrated teams in Celtics history is the 2020 team. Because of the pandemic and the bubble, they go to the conference finals. That was supposed to be a pseudo rebuilding time, and they were one of the last 3 teams left standing, which is amazing. But that 2021 season was ugly with COVID and everything else that hit, and the lineup that I just said that you played in the final game because of the injuries. You had to move on from Kemba, and that seemed like a move you were making to fill the Kyrie spot. History is so concrete. You say, oh yeah, they were on the path this whole time. What Brad Stevens walked into his first day was not a team that was close to a championship. And methodically, move after move after move, he got them here. And history is going to record this, as one of the great, we always thought Danny was in the great tradition of Red, and he was. But Danny and Brad both had extraordinary success doing it in completely different ways, and yet both have really carried on that sort of Red Auerbach tradition. Remember the joke a few years ago is that nobody wanted to answer a call from Danny? Well, who wants to answer a call from Brad now?
I agree. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap this up, this has all been, and we're a big picture show, so it's been big picture conversation about, what does the title mean and legacies for all of these guys and all of that. And we'll have more time throughout the summer to celebrate this, because I really do believe, again, history what it is, that this thing is over. But the question is, does it actually end in Dallas, or does it come back to Boston? What does it take for the Mavericks, in your mind, Sean, to force this back on Monday, to make people out there a little, give the talking heads a little ammunition, make people a little bit nervous? We know the talent is there in terms of Luka and Kyrie and the depth, and Luka, after that lashing that he took from Windhorst, he's probably gonna be out there trying to answer. What does it take? Because it seems like, whether it's Celtics winning in a blowout in game 1, winning with winning the we can't shoot game in game 2, and winning without Porzingis in game 3, I don't know what the Mavericks do to counteract.
Well, everything we know says that it ends right in game 4, because that's historically the way this goes. When a team knows they're beat, they find a way to lose. And the exception of that Lakers team, you don't get on a plane to go and lose when you know you can't win the series. But if you look at it individually, if you take the emotion out of it, the recipe for Dallas to win Game 4 is very much there, because obviously you're not going to have Porzingis, right? Like, you're not going to play Porzingis when you're up 3-0. If there's any scenario that you might need him or want him later in the series, you're certainly not going to play him. Then we move to the fact that there's only 1 day in between games and not 2 days between games. Then add to that the Al Horford minutes that he had to play. So all of a sudden, if you look at it as an individual game and subtract all the which is, it's silly to subtract emotion. It's a big part of everything this time of year. But if you subtract all of that, the recipe, not to mention the law of averages, but the Celtics now have the second longest road winning streak in NBA playoff history. They won 9 consecutive road playoff games. How much longer can that go on? The 2001 Lakers are the only team to ever go 8-0 on the road in the playoffs. A team put together, by the way, by Jerry West, as if you don't think there's, like bigger forces at work here. I'll tell you this, I did say, as I felt there was no way the Celtics could lose on a day we lost Bill Walton, I really felt genuinely going into Game 3 on Wednesday night that there was no way that the Celtics could win on a night we lost Jerry West. I didn't think, we were at the end of the night, I was kind of looking up to see if we could hear any furniture being tossed around, up there. And there was part of me that enjoyed the idea of maybe Jerry and Red being together last night with maybe Bill in between them to make sure that it got, it stayed civil. I think, you referenced earlier it's so funny because the last thing we think of is being on camera while we're calling games. I know my dear friend Kevin Harlan is not really warmed up to that idea, but that's the way of the world now, right? We're on camera. And that stuff went viral with Max at the end of the, end of the Eastern Conference Finals. But the one thing, my favorite thing that I said that night was never part of all the videos that went around, which is that night I really felt, I said, somewhere tonight, Bill and Red are together lighting one up. Not the same stuff. They are together lighting one up tonight, which is, again, it's just to lose Bill and then to lose Jerry in the middle of the finals. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy. Listen, I wax historic because that's my job. My job isn't to call Game 4 tomorrow night. My job is, if this is the 100th and final game, to tell the story I've been telling since the start of the year and for the better part of 3 years since Brad took over. And one of the things I've had sort of difficulty trying to figure out is where, if the story ends tomorrow night, where did this story begin? Did it begin after winning the championship in 2008? Did it begin on the night Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce got traded? And remember what I told you last time about Kevin McHale being the second greatest McHale now in Celtics history, because it was Mikhail Prokhorov that made that trade that gave the Celtics, Jalen and Jason. Where did this story, the one that's about to end, where did it begin? And that's sort of it's an interesting element to me. But the big picture, my thought about 2024 in real time in a season, as I told you guys all year, is going to be remembered for decades to come. And as Eddie House and obviously Scal's his own entity, and Perk and those guys walk into Paul Pierce, when they walk in the building now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, Jalen, Jason, but when Drew Holiday, when Derek White, your cousin from Boston, when he walks back in the building, there's an element of Celtics royalty here. When you're through the looking glass, because the Celtics are about to take that final step, you are legend. You are a made man. And to be a made man in the most storied tradition in the history of the game, to be the team that, however you count the championships, let's say right now, as we're talking in real time, it's 17-17, however you want to count Bubbles or Minneapolis, nobody cares. The Celtics are about to take their place now, not just on the top of the mountain in real time, but on the top of the all-time mountain. And this is the team that did it. So I don't know where this particular chapter of the story began, but I know where it's going to end.
8 straight wins on the road, 10 straight playoff wins overall for the Celtics going into Friday night. An opportunity to close this out. One more in each category. You get yourself 9-11. 911 is the number that the Mavericks may want to call at this point, because we got something serious going on here. That's why I close this on a bad joke. All right, listen. Want to thank Sean Grande, who does such a wonderful job as always whenever he's on with us, but on the call every single game, obviously, and just putting everything that we are seeing and hearing and witnessing in the proper perspective. We're going to have a whole lot of summer to be able to react and celebrate and look ahead and all of it. But you know, it's coming, folks, and hopefully it is coming on Friday night. And social media is going to be pointing a lot of fingers at a lot of different people, and I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. All of your tweets. I'm gonna be enjoying every second of them. Sean, thanks so much for hopping on as always.
You got it, guys. Enjoy it.
Sean Grande, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Another Celtics beat, hopefully to discuss the 8-time champion Celtics next week.